The angry video game nerd recently set his sights on terrible wrestling games for the NES and SNES platforms, and as usual, I had a good laugh at his choices, his reactions to them, and that ending, man. But what did disappoint me a little is I wish he had gone into more detail explaining why the games were so bad. He also missed some other stains in gaming that were far worse than the SNES WWF games. I'm Patrick, and here are some terrible wrestling games that AVGN didn't mention.
World Championship Wrestling!
World Championship Wrestling for NES is an abomination of a game, and it's a shame because it actually avoids the mistakes that WWF WrestleMania and WrestleMania Challenge made. There's actual wrestling in this game. You can even pick your moves before the match. What leaves it dead in the water is horrible game mechanics and visuals that seem like a poor man's pro wrestling for NES. To play, you simply kick, and kick, and kick, until your opponent becomes tired. Then you can perform a wrestling move on him. He gets back up, the kicking continues. Since I'm comparing it to Pro Wrestling for NES, that game also had the ability to degrade into punching and kicking messes just like WCW. But the difference is, it wasn't mandatory to start the gameplay. In this game, it basically is. Kicking is less of a necessity once a wrestler becomes worn down, but at no point is this fun. It's a chore that would wear down even the most patient player. Yet it doesn't deserve anyone's patience, let alone attention. FCI tried to sell WCW the same way Acclaim sold the WWF games, the company's roster. Fans of the Southern promotion were well aware who lively characters like Sting, Ric Flair, and the Road Warriors were, but a roster doesn't mean fuck all if the game is so bad that it's not worth playing. There are simply too many other options out there for someone who wants to play a wrestling video game. Oh, it's raining bad WCW games like bird in here. WCW Backstage Assault is what happens when a team who doesn't know much about wrestling creates the thing that should not be. This thing is the Voldemort of wrestling games. The biggest issue with Backstage Assault is it lives and dies on its name. There is no wrestling ring, and various mechanics such as climbing on top of backstage equipment to replace options such as climbing turnbuckles is so poorly done that I don't care to bother with it. Instead, make way for attacking with weapons for what feels like forever. The matches are drawn out and boring. The game's load times are awful. Instead of a time for enjoyment, this game is a test of my patience. This game gets no bonus points for the various movesets each character has simply because it was released after the AKI series of games. We'd already seen how wrestling games could be great by this time, but along comes Backstage Assault to mind us. Like, sure, there have been bad wrestling games in the past, but do the character models really have to look this garbage? I know you're thinking I'm probably being too hard on the game. It was a sign of the times, and hardcore wrestling exploded in the late 90s, but none of that matters. This game doesn't suck because it's too hardcore, it sucks because it's an insult to the senses. There's a reason why Muscle Tag Team Match exists, and it's not to give you quality entertainment for your money. Ever heard of the lineup of 1980s muscle toys? No? Well, that's what this game wanted you to know about. It barely has mechanics, it barely has any AI, it barely has a point, but it wants you to know all about muscle toys. To be fair, the game developers tried to make things a little different by featuring a ring with an ice mat or electrified ropes, but the last feature actually kills a game mechanic. You know you're officially waiting in when a feature kills a game mechanic, and you barely have any to begin with. The selection of different characters and their special moves gives a break from the monotony, but not really enough to start having any fun. You get the ball, the some guy rolls into the ring, you hit your move. And it becomes necessary to get the ball later on, or you're f***ed. Who's the guy throwing the ball in anyway? Shouldn't that be a disqualification? I don't know. This game is weird. I know some argue that this game's simplistic nature makes it fun and easy to pick up, but I think the complete opposite. Hopping around like a jack just isn't fun. I know there are other incredibly awful wrestling games out there, but I can't really comment on them because I haven't played them. Now, the general consensus is to stay away from games like Simpsons Wrestling, the Backyard Wrestling series, or anything that comes on a handheld. In closing, I have two words for these games. You're garbage.